Okay, so you should have your name on the back of both of your pieces of your paper. This is the back, but we need it on the back of both of them because they're going to dry separately and we'll glue them together. So I'm going to flip this one over so it's on the front. Now, just so I know about how far I need to paint my sunset down to, I'm going to lay this one on top, make sure the bottom corners are lined up just about. Doesn't have to be exact because we're just estimating. And I'm going to put a line right here and a line right here, just so that I know when I pull it away that that is about where my sun should be. But I don't want to put a whole bunch of pencil there because then it'll leave a pencil mark when I go to paint it. Okay, so you can see when I laid my paper down, the area was a little wet. It's okay. I don't need my pencil over here. The paper, we drew very, very lightly that line. Okay, and we're only painting the top half really. Now, because we want the sun to appear white, we're actually not going to paint the sun. We're going to start with yellow, sunshine, and we're going to go, I guess we're going to kind of paint around where the sun would be, but it doesn't have to be an exact rainbow shape or arch. But I started by painting a lot of yellow in the sky. Okay, once you've done the yellow, then you're gonna do the orange, okay? And you don't want any white to show up in between where the yellow and the orange touch. So I'm gonna actually start right on the edge of the yellow. And I'm gonna do quite a bit of orange, almost to the top of my paper. Then you're gonna add red to the top up here. And you don't want it to be super like dark red. You want to have a little bit of that red, but then you want to spread it out with the water so it feels more pink, because we don't really get that dark red at sunsets. We get a pink color, and to make the pink you need a light red. So it's a little bit of the red paint, mostly with water, spreading it out. And I'm going to actually go back once I've got the pink on there. I'm going to add a little bit of orange on top of the edge just to make sure I've blended it really well. And that there's not going to be any white showing through. Now, if you'll notice, I didn't do straight lines. You don't want to have perfect strips of yellow and perfect strips of orange and perfect of red, because it won't look realistic, okay? In fact, I'm adding some like blotchy clumps of orange in here to make it look kind of like a little bit cloudy, a little bit softer, like the sky, okay? Just to kind of blend it all together. Do make sure you get pretty much down to where your pencil line is. Again, you don't want to see that pencil line, so make sure that you do it very lightly when you go to draw it. I'm adding a little bit of red up there just so that it doesn't leave the top white. Okay, now I'm gonna go take this very carefully and lay it on the drying rack. If this is how your spot is when you pick it up, once you put this on the drying rack, come back and wipe that up with a paper towel. Okay, you'll notice that there's no water cup for this portion. Make sure that your name is on the back and you have flipped it over. If you remember correctly, the sunset we were doing is in the middle, and we left the sun part white. So because our paper's dark, we're going to start with white, and I'm getting quite a bit of white, and I'm just gonna go side to side. I'm not painting up and down. I'm going side to side, and I'm keeping my brush flat. And again, you don't want this to be perfect. You don't want this to be perfect. The brightest part should be right here in front of where the sun's gonna be, in the middle of your paper. Okay, you're just guessing where the middle of your paper is. It doesn't have to be exact because it's water. You're going to have a pretty dry brush with some of the paint on there. So once you get it up there to the edge, then you're gonna start using the rest of the white that's on your paintbrush to kind of get a little bit of that white off and go down your paper. And as you do, the white should start to run out. Now I still have a little bit of white on my paintbrush, but not a whole bunch. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to actually get some blue. I'm going to start with just a little bit of blue since I still have white on my brush. And I barely tapped it in the blue, and I'm going to go right here on the edge. And as I do, I'm still going side to side, but as I do, it's mixing with the wet white on my paper. That little bit of blue I grabbed is turning into light blue. Now I've run out on my brush. I'm going to go back, get a little bit more, and I'm going to keep going just around this center part. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit more. Notice I'm not covering all the paper. Some of the paper is still showing through. Ooh, that was a lot right there. Good thing I have a lot of white right there to mix it with. Keep that mostly white in the center. Okay, now I've got my light blue. Now I'm going to add a little bit more blue on my brush. Okay, I still haven't washed my brush yet or rinsed my brush off. And I'm starting on the edge of my paper because that's where the darkest blue will go. And again, you're just painting side to side to kind of make it look like ocean waves. If you need to go up and down a little bit to kind of get some of the edge of your paper, you can. But your paper is already like an oceany blue, so you don't have to cover up all the paper. So I'm gonna keep going, and I'm brushing out that paint until I pretty much can't get any more off, and then that's when I go to reload the paint. Okay, down here at the bottom is where it should be the darkest, but again, it doesn't have to be completely covered. So I've done one side, now I'm gonna go and do the other side over here. I'm gonna start on the edge of my paper and going side to side, and I'm pulling in, so that way as it gets towards the center, it gets a little lighter. And I'm gonna almost be done. Now on the next part, we're gonna create a reflection of the sky in the water. And to do that, you're just going to use a little bit of those colors. I repeat, just a little bit. Right now we're doing the blue, okay? And this will be the color that you use probably the most of for this ocean water. Okay, if you leave some globs on there, it's gonna be okay, all right? Now, I still have quite a bit of blue on my brush, but I don't wanna add any more to my water because it'll be too much and you won't be able to see in the paper coming through. So I'm gonna take my brush, and as much as I can, I'm just gonna wipe off on my paper towel just to get the big globs of that blue off. Now, my brush still has some blue on it. It's okay. I'm gonna start by adding a little bit of yellow. I touch just a little bit in there. And remember how we did the watercolor yellow right around the white? That's what we're gonna do here. We're gonna mix in. Now, it may turn a little green. Don't blend it too much. You're just kind of barely tapping it on and sweeping it. It should be kind of globby. Lots of almost like line puddles of that yellow. That's it, okay? Maybe if you add a few down here, that's fine. Mine looks kind of green too, but it's yellow sunshine in the water. I'm gonna leave that yellow on my brush. There's just a little bit left. I'm gonna get some orange, just a little bit. That was actually quite a bit. I might tap that on my paper a little bit. There we go. And on a little bit on the outside of the yellow, I'm gonna mix in some orange. It's not a perfect orange because remember, it's orange sunlight reflecting in the water. Now, instead of going back to the orange, I'm gonna pull from my paper towel that extra that I wiped off. Do some down here, kind of randomly. Now I'm gonna tap off just a little bit, and I'm gonna go in and get myself just a little bit of red. Remember, we don't want too much red because it's not like the sky. The sky actually has that pink color, but you can add a few hints of that in there. That should be the least amount of red, and that you can mix in a little bit more to where it doesn't feel too vibrant and overpowering. Once you've gotten to this point, you will take this to the drying rack, and if you had a little extra paint left over on the table, you'll want to take your paper towel. After you take your painting to the drying rack, take your paper towel, if you've got a clean enough spot on your paper towel, and just wipe up what you can. And if you can't get it to come up, just make sure it's dry, and I'll get all the rest of the paint off after class. Okay, when you come back to class, you're gonna need scissors, glue, and a white colored pencil with your black piece of paper. I'm gonna turn it this way. On this, you're gonna be drawing and cutting out some sailboat parts and some seagulls or pelicans, whichever seabirds you want to imagine. I'm going to do 2 different size boats, and to do that I'm going to use the top edge as the top of my boat. So I'm going to do I guess it's the bottom part of my boat, the part that sits in the water, but this is the top edge of that part. So I'm going to draw one. It comes down at an angle, comes flat across, and then back up at an angle. Okay, I'm going to cut on the inside of that line, just making sure y'all can see that on camera. Good. Now I'm going to do a smaller boat. That's going to be way off in the distance, come down at an angle, flat across, and back up. Okay, then I have the mast. That's the long skinny line that is the pole that holds up the sails. So I'm going to do that using this edge of my paper, and for this one I'm going to make it about this big. It's pretty skinny, so it's just barely a cut off the edge of the paper. And then for this one, I'm going to do it over here, and it's going to be much smaller, maybe like here, and even skinnier. If I may have to cut it, I may not be able to draw it skinnier. Okay, so I've got little mast, little boat, big mast, big boat. Now for the sails, I'm going to do 2 triangles for each. And I'm going to draw, I'm pretending that the mast is in the middle right now. So I'm going to draw 1 triangle here, flat on the bottom. Okay, you don't want it to be too much wider than your boat, I don't think you want it wider than your boat. I could be wrong though. I don't know. And then I'm going to draw the other triangle here. This sail I'm going to make a little taller. Okay. And a little bit bigger on this side. This needs to be much smaller for this little mast here. So I'm going to do a smaller sail. That might be too tall. That might be too tall. I may need to make this guy a little bit longer, like that. There we go. Like that. And I'll do this one. I'll do this side a little shorter. And remember, once you get these cut out, you can flip-flop them on either side of the boat, however you want to do it. Okay, so I've got 2 sails and a mast and a boat. A big boat, 2 sails, and a mast for that one. Now I'm going to draw my seagulls. Seagulls can be any which way. I'm going to start by drawing 2 curved lines for one, and then I start on the edge of this wing. I'm going to go down underneath, like I'm going to go again, but I don't touch that middle, because this is where their beak would be and their body, and then I come up and I touch the edge of that wing over there. I'm going to do that again, but this time I'm going to do it smaller. And one more time, even smaller for my 3rd bird. I don't like to have things be perfect because it's usually pretty unrealistic. Like if I had 2 boats and 2 birds, or 1 boat, 1 bird. So that's why I made it uneven, where I have 2 boats and 3 birds. Then you're going to cut these out. Okay, so I had to move back over here because I didn't have enough room for my camera to capture all that you have to do. So you'll still do this at your table. These are the pieces that I cut out. These will be dry because this is the 2nd class. So mine are still wet because I'm doing this all at once. But if they're dry, you shouldn't have any problem gluing these down. Right now I'm just organizing my little pieces so I don't get confused when I start to glue. I don't have to get it perfect. I'm just trying to get it to where I know what goes with what. Okay, so there's my small boat, here's my birds, here's my big boat. So this is still wet for me, but what you're gonna do, we're gonna be gluing this down just like that, okay? So what I'm gonna do is you will put glue on the back of your blue piece of paper along the edges. I'm just gonna lay mine down right here since it's still wet. I don't want it to touch the table. I'm just gonna put a line close to the edge, but not to where it's gonna squish out. That's good. I'm gonna lay that there. Then I'm gonna pick it up and I'm gonna make sure that the bottom corners match. And then you want to, okay, see mine kind of covered up my sun. So I'm gonna trick it up a little bit by pulling it down so I see more of that sun. There we go. Make sure it's not glued to the table. Okay, good. Again, another reason why you don't want to put it exactly on the edge. Now you can press it down nice and neat. Mine's still wet. You can see I just put a blue fingerprint where it's supposed to be yellow. But press it down nice and flat so that it stays in place. Okay, when it comes to gluing the boats and the birds down, yes, it could be a bigger bird or a bigger boat, but I want the smaller things to go far back in the distance. So I'm gonna make the bigger boat be closer to me and the smaller boat, like closer to the bottom of the paper, and the smaller boat a little bit higher up. And then the birds can kind of be wherever because they fly all over the place. But I'm gonna have the smaller boat somewhere up here and the bigger boat down low. Okay, as always, make sure you completely close your glue bottle. One thing I want you to think about when you're placing the sails, you don't actually have to put them right up against the mast. You can leave some of that ocean showing through. That's why we cut them in separate pieces instead of cutting them all together. And you can let some of the sky show through the sail if you want to, because it makes it look more realistic. Usually they're attached with ropes, so they're not actually like glued or sewed into the mast. And then also making sure that those sails aren't way up here, that they sit just right above the actual boat part is what you want to do. Then the very last thing you'll do is sign it. With cursive, I would like for you to try and sign your name somewhere down on this corner or on this corner. I'll give you a Sharpie to do that, and you just sign your name on the bottom, and then you're done.